It is now year 6 for Zion Williamson. Yes, year 6. It felt like he's basically like just come to the league, maybe year 4. And that's probably because he hasn't played a ton of basketball so far. He's only played in 184 career games. But to be fair, when the dude plays, he absolutely balls out.
Yeah, 2 All-Star appearances in 4 seasons. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, but every time the playoffs roll around, this dude's just got something bothering him.
Before we start talking about Zion's career so far, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. So like we said in the intro, this is year 6 for Zion. He's actually only played in 4 total seasons because he missed 2022 with that Jones fracture. And it's been a disappointing career so far. You cannot say anything else about it. He was one of the most hyped prospects going into the draft in NBA history. I mean, who was the most hyped prospect prior to him? Maybe AD? Maybe Blake? You could maybe even go back to LeBron.
Well, I'd say it's probably LeBron because he seemed, and we say this all the time, whether it's, Wiggins or Shabazz Muhammad, he was the next LeBron. But it felt like that because he kind of played that same style. He had that imposing physicality. I mean, he was a media phenomenon at Duke.
I mean, I remember in high school, he was getting interviewed by SportsCenter. He was everywhere at Duke. I mean, remember when he busted that shoe and Nike's stock literally went down because of that?
Their stock went down.
And I was really hoping he was going to go to the Knicks. The Knicks were one of the worst teams in the league during that draft lottery, but they get the 3rd pick. New Orleans gets the 1st pick. Just disappointing to see as a guy who likes the Knicks, but also pretty predictable.
Yeah, my theory around this time was that New York's too obvious, right? Because everyone around this time was all into the conspiracy theory of like, oh, they're going to give the Knicks like this new young superstar. New York's too obvious. It's Chicago, right? Team with an all-time great that was a high flyer, big market that's been down for a while, great basketball town. He's definitely going to Chicago. We were both wrong. He went to New Orleans.
During the preseason, we got a sign of things to come. He tore his meniscus, and he'd go on to miss the first 44 games of that season. It was just devastating to see, like, one of the most hyped prospects come to the league in a long time. Everyone wants to see him, and then we just don't get to see him because he's rehabbing for that injury.
We know what that's like.
That's why I felt even worse for Zion, because we knew Greg Oden. He kind of reminded me of Greg Oden, like a bigger player, dominant player. But to be fair to Zion, his first game completely balls out, 22 points, 7 rebounds, and dude was just weirdly on fire from 3.
Yeah, the thing I remember from this game the most is that they gave out shirts to the crowd like it was a playoff game. Now, most people didn't end up wearing them, but you could still see a couple shots where a decent amount of people got the shirts on, which, I mean, look, it's a big game. So I'm always for stuff like that gets the crowd more into it.
Yeah, huge game in franchise history.
He only played 24 games his rookie year, but he was so good over that period that he actually finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. He had 3 30-plus point games, had over 20 points in 19 of those 24 games, and he actually stole a 1st place vote for Rookie of the Year off of Ja, and the dude who voted him first was just a guy from Chicago, so it wasn't even a homer vote. I mean, he was probably just salty my theory didn't work out.
Right. Going into next season, there was some optimism around the Pelicans, and it made sense. You had Zion coming off that second half of the rookie year, or maybe like final quarter of the rookie year was really good. Brandon Ingram, Lonzo before he had all these injuries. You had Josh Hart, but then they make that just bizarre move to hire Stan Van Gundy. It had been 2 years since he last coached on that bad Pistons team. What the hell was this?
It's baffling is what it was. Like a guy that is not known as like a developer of young talent, known as kind of like, an asshole, like old style coach.
Yeah.
Didn't end well in Miami, didn't end well in Orlando, didn't end well in Detroit, and the Pelicans are like, oh yeah, he's gonna be the guy to develop, the biggest draft pick in recent franchise history, right?
Yeah, and Zion actually stayed healthy through the first part of this season at least. He plays 34 of the first 35 games, makes the All-Star team for the first time, but they only start 15 and 20, even though he's healthy. And he had some big games. He outduels Ja, drops 31 points, 7 assists, 6 boards, had a 36-point game against the Mavericks where he shot 14 of 15 from the field, and then had a 37-point career high 15 board and 8 assist game versus the 76ers, but the Pelicans go just 31 and 41. I have to blame that on the coach. Like, they were a young team, not very good on defense. They turned the ball over. It's going to happen, but you got to do better with that roster and 31 wins in a shortened NBA season.
And then during the 2021 offseason, we got the news that Zion suffered a Jones fracture in his right foot, and he was supposed to come back at some point that season. You know, at first it was, oh, hopefully he'll be back for the start of the season. Then it was December. Then it was the All-Star break. And then the season ended.
Yeah. Dude just never came back. I mean, it was around that time I was getting worried about him because September 2021, we got that infamous Mountain Dew commercial where dude was looking big. I mean, it doesn't help that he was like gaming. It was a bad angle. You got Doritos on the table. You got 2 bottles of Mountain Dew, but he was looking pretty big.
It's a rough advertisement for a guy that people were criticizing for, you know, his ability to stay healthy and his weight and whatnot. Here you are plugging Doritos and Mountain Dew. Like, LeBron was able to get away for years with plugging Sprite Cranberry every Christmas time because the dude looks like he's cut out of granite.
Yeah.
Zion did not look like that at that point.
This year, though, the Pelicans actually had a pretty good season. You trade for CJ and you sneak into the play-in. They only won 36 games, but they make the play-in, beat the Spurs in the first play-in game, and then beat the Clippers as the 10th seed. And then they even took 2 games off the 64-win Suns. So a very successful season, but it just hurts that Zion missed the entire year. And once again, we're worried about his weight.
Yeah, but I mean, even still, you got a good supporting cast of Brandon Ingram and CJ, and you got other guys like, you know, Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Larry Nance, Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, you throw Zion in that mix, like that's a good team right there. And that offseason, the Pelicans, they decided to go all in on Zion. Despite having only played 85 games in 3 seasons, he got a 5-year, $193 million extension. And I know a lot of people at the time were clowning on the Pelicans and, you know, clowning on Zion, like, oh, you know, does he deserve it? Does he deserve it? The Pelicans had no choice. They had to give this to him. I mean, as a small market team, when you have a guy like that with that kind of potential, you have to lock him up because you're not getting another one unless you can somehow draft one.
Absolutely. And the next year he responds, like he had that criticism and he was balling out. In December, he got his first Player of the Week award, drops a career high 43 points versus the Timberwolves. Like, he's playing great, makes the All-Star team, but less than a week after that career high, he had that hamstring injury against the 76ers. And it was the same thing as the previous year. Like, oh, he's coming back, you know, give it time. He'll be back. He'll be back before the playoffs. We got that bizarre interview where he said he'll come back when he feels like Zion again.
What the f does that mean?
I think what he meant was, I'll come back when I feel like myself again. I'm like 100% there.
Then
but
say that. Don't say when I feel like Zion again.
Yeah, it made no sense. Pelicans missed the playoffs after losing to OKC in the play-in. And because of that, there was, you know, kind of rumors like, are they going to move on from Zion? I don't think there was any truth to them, but we were at least trying to convince ourselves there was because
trying to manifest it.
Yeah, and the rumor was they really wanted Scoot, and maybe we could trade maybe Anthony Simons in the 3rd pick, which would get them Scoot for Zion. Again, I don't think there was any truth to these, but we were buying into it just out of hope.
Oh yeah, I was so in on this. I remember a lot of Blazer fans weren't because they were, you know, enthralled with the potential of Scoot, but I was like, man, f***ing Dame and Zion on a team together. Ugh, man. Ultimately though, the Pelicans hold on to both Zion and Brandon Ingram, who also got tossed into trade talks here and there that offseason. And they had their best season since they had Chris Paul. They went 49-33 under Willie Green in his 3rd year at the helm. Zion wasn't like amazing this year. His scoring was down, but the big thing for him, and this was kind of like the only thing at this point, he stayed healthy. He played 70 games, which I think is a good number for him. Finally felt like this was going to be the year where, oh, he's going to play in the playoffs. They finished as the 7th seed. They played the Lakers in that play-in game, and Zion was giving it to the Lakers. 40 points, 11 boards, 5 assists, was really carrying them by himself. Tied a game off an alley-oop from Alvarado. Lakers score, but he ties the game again on the next possession, and unfortunately, when he comes down, he tears his meniscus right before the start of the playoffs. Just as a fellow small market fan, like, man.
Yeah, I've always liked Zion. I don't know why. I like his style of play, and it felt like this was the moment. It's a postseason type game. It's not technically the postseason, but it's a postseason type game. It's the first play-in, playoff game he's played in, and he was balling out. Like, he was on the verge of maybe like a 50-point carry job, and that happens. I mean, the Pelicans still make the playoffs. They beat the Kings in the next game after they fell to the Lakers, but you get swept by the Thunder, and it's just so disappointing because to me, it felt like this was a turning point of his career, but once again, the injuries just strike back. So that brings us to this offseason. The Pelicans still had a lot of questions. Zion's injury concerns were still there. Brandon Ingram once again was getting brought up in trade talks.
I tell you what, he looked just thrilled to be there in those media day pictures.
Yeah, that didn't look great. You have CJ, who I would say has been kind of a disappointment. He's getting up there in age, still not a good defender. And then you still have a good supporting cast though of Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado. But then they make that big move to get DeJounte Murray. I don't know what to think about this. You send out Dyson Daniels, EJ Liddell, Larry Nance, Cody Zeller, and 2 firsts. Like, it makes you a better team. Maybe it gives you some more protection if Zion gets injured, but it doesn't quite put you at the top of the Western Conference.
That's true, but I don't also think there's a move out there that could have done that for them. So, I mean, this is a definite upgrade. You get a guy who can both score and defend, probably going to be a good fit next to CJ, although we said that about him and Trae Young, but
True.
I think he's going to be a good fit next to CJ. And like you said, Zion is probably going to miss some games here and there, gives you some insurance. So, you know, I like the move. Does it put them in like the top 3 in the Western Conference? I don't think so, but let's keep in mind, Dallas made the finals as the 5th seed. So if you can just make the playoffs in the West, like, there's so much parity in the NBA now that I think like anyone could beat anyone in the Western Conference.
That's a fair point. And the other big news is Zion is apparently skinny. I mean, there was that viral photo that came out recently. I think it was at a basketball camp. And then at media day, to me, he was looking thin. The question is, are we buying into it? Because this is the whole thing of like Ben Simmons been in the lab on the jumper. Like every single year we hear the same stories in the NBA.
It almost feels like a crypto scam at this point. Like I hear all these success stories. I'm making so much money. Everything's going so good. But yet something just feels off about it, you know?
It's Ben Simmons has been in the lab on the jumper. Russell Westbrook's on a new team. He's going to work out this time. And Zion Williamson has lost some weight. Like, it happens every year, but maybe this is the year. At the very least, I just want to see him healthy come playoff time. Like, I don't think he can live up to that hype anymore. Like,
oh, really?
I mean, the hype was, and what I thought he'd be was maybe face of the league, MVP candidate, top 5 player. At this moment, it's not that. It's make the All-Star team, maybe an All-NBA team, stay healthy for the playoffs.
At this point, it's just stay healthy.
Yeah, stay healthy and win a playoff series. That would be a success at this point.
I will ask though, you think he could still be the best player on a championship team?
I do.
Okay, I still do too, because I mean, when he plays, he's phenomenal, and he's got a great supporting cast around him. And you know, if they have a full season together where everyone stays healthy, I think they could make some noise in the Western Conference. I think they could almost maybe be like, not quite as good as the Timberwolves were last year, but kind of be a team like the Timberwolves where, you know, a lot of people aren't really expecting much from them and they, you know, take a big jump. So I'm excited to see what Zion's doing this year, but we are getting close to the point of no return with him.
Yeah, dude's just gotta stay healthy at least for one full season. So what do you guys think? Is this finally the year for Zion and the Pelicans? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving a like, and hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well. And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.